Hello, fellow mech warriors, Mage Leader here, and, well, it's happened. It's out. It's here. The book that everyone told me I shouldn't pass judgment on the Ill Clan era until it came out has come out. Empire Alone. Now, when I talked about the initial Ill Clan book and Tamar Rising, the biggest thing people told me in the comments section was to wait until Empire Alone comes out. Don't say that Clan Wolf is carrying their tons of plot armor until Empire Alone comes out. They're gonna get their asses handed to them in Empire Alone. Just wait for that book. It'll fix things. It'll make things better. And with some of the information that was coming out prior to me having read it, I was starting to buy into the hype a little bit. You know, just it looked like it was going to be what people said it was going to be. It was going to be the Wolf Empire, which is now completely isolated and undefended, finally having people come in and kick the shit out of them, because it's stupid to leave a massive section of the galaxy undefended and take all of your forces to a single planet. Because the Inner Sphere is a bunch of opportunists, and they will come in and take all of your shit while you're gone. So, that's what this book was supposed to be, and that's what a lot of the language and the marketing of this book built it up to be. So I got a physical copy of it, so I'm a little late to the party here, but I've been purposefully avoiding most of the information about it, because I wanted to read it for myself and get an honest impression of where it was going. And so I waited for the physical release because I like reading books physically. And I got it from my local game store yesterday, and I sat down, I spent the whole evening going through it and reading the whole thing, which was easier than doing them with Tamar Rising, because I don't know if this is accurate because I haven't actually counted the pages, but I feel like this book was shorter. And I know for a fact that the story is shorter, but more on that in a little bit. I got to the end of it, and I was thoroughly underwhelmed by what I found here. There's some good stuff. There's some things that give me some hope. But people saying that this is the book that breaks Clan Wolf's plot armor are smoking some very, very heavy amounts of copium at the moment, because there is plot armor for days in this book. The simple fact that it's taken this long for anybody to even start moving in after how blindingly obvious it was that the entire area is undefended, all the intelligence coming out of that area, and they don't even use the blackout to justify most of that. There's so much evidence for the better part of a year that there's nobody defending the Wolf Empire. And the fact that it takes like a year and a half for anything that meaningful to happen is plot armor in and of itself. Because if this made any sense, the second they found out that it was up for grabs, they would have gone and grabbed it. Because if you take away all of Clan Wolf's territory in the Wolf Empire, all that industrial base that they had, and leave them completely isolated on Terra, they can be the Ill Clan all they want, but they're not going to be able to do shit. Well, now they've had an entire year since taking Terra, where they've potentially been able to rebuild. So I should probably start at the beginning. So, because I want to rant about stuff that requires a little bit of background. So it's essentially the book's mostly about the Free Worlds League and their encounters with the Wolf Empire, and they got some intel that it might be undefended, so they've moved some troops over there with the purpose of examining and seeing how things are. And a couple of guys decide that they're going to buck their orders and go and take territory on their own. So they do, and find the planets almost completely undefended, and send the information back to the Free Worlds League, whose response was, "Oh." And then that's it. So, the majority of the stories is just these couple little dukes with their little private armies and mercenaries fighting the tiny, pathetic defense put up by the what remains of Clan Wolf in the Wolf Empire. And that's basically the whole thing. There's a couple of raids done by the Wolf's Dragoons, and it's nice to see that they're kicking some Clan Wolf ass like they should have always been, instead of siding with them, because obviously they were going to get screwed over. But they're starting to wake up and become the Mary Sue badasses that we all know and love. And that's about it. That's most of what this book is. So when people say this is like the Free Worlds League's going to move in and take all that territory, the last line in this book is when the Free Worlds League actually begins their invasion. This is all just build up. So like the first section of this book is called Preludes to War. The whole book should have been in that section, because that's all this is. It's a couple of minor border skirmishes with the very limited defenders of the Wolf Empire. That's all that's covered here. The Free Worlds League takes forever to figure out that the territory is up for grabs and that they should go and grab it. And it takes the death of one of their generals and a rousing speech to finally get Parliament to get off its ass and do something. Which, I mean, that's in character for the Free Worlds League, I guess. But they're the only ones who are able to actually do anything, apparently, because the Lyrans don't have the resources, according to Tamar Rising, to go and take a bunch of undefended territory. They don't have the resources to go and fight nobody and grab a bunch of free stuff that's sitting out there. They don't have the resources. Whatever. So the only ones who can at the moment is the Free Worlds League, and they're busy being the ridiculous bureaucrats that they've always been, and sitting on their hands and hemming and hawing about everything, and generally contributing nothing to the setting. So, basic Free Worlds League stuff. And I was hoping this would be the book where they get off their asses and do stuff, and it kind of is, because they come around at the very, very end of the book. We don't even see their first military deployment. We don't even know which planet they go to first. It just... I'll pull it up here. Hold on, I got the book right next to me. So, the very, very last line in this book. Find it here. Yes, so page 77 of this book. On 28th June 3152, the FWLM launched its first wave of open assault on the Wolf Empire. That is the last line in the whole book. It took the entire book to get to that point. So yeah, the whole book should have fit into that Preludes to War section at the very beginning, because that's all that's in here. The war hasn't started. Like, there's a section in this book called The Raging Storm, and it's like, there's not much of a storm. They've lost a couple planets to some ambitious dukes, and the Wolf's Dragoons are generally ruining their day, but they have 2 galaxies of defenders that they've cobbled together from what remains, and that's all that they have to defend the entirety of the Wolf Empire with. And at the end of the book, they're still more or less completely intact. And nobody's really gotten into a big fight. There have been just some very, very small skirmishes that have resulted in planets either being taken or lost, or in some cases with the wolves retaken. So it's back and forth. There's just nothing here. There's just nothing here. Nothing happens in this book. I can't help but feel like we were misled a little bit. And that's not even the worst part. So what's going on in this book is that half of it has nothing to do with the Free Worlds League or the Wolf Empire, because they're so desperate to have this book be of any length at all that they have to fill half of it with Canopian stuff. So it's the Magistracy of Canopus and the Andurians and the Capellan Confederation having some issues getting along with each other. So... and also, they get invaded a tiny bit by the Marian hegemony comes around and briefly takes a couple of their planets, and then some Canopian Mary Sue general goes out and kicks their asses. And so if you're into that sort of thing, that's in here. And honestly, it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's the most interesting thing that happens in this entire book. And it has nothing to do with the title Empire alone. It has nothing to do with it whatsoever. It's just side stuff that happens to be happening. And they threw it into this one because there's so little content to it that they needed to fill up the pages with something. That's half of it. Half of it is Canopian stuff. That's how desperate they are to put anything of substance in here. This whole book should have been about the Free Worlds League's invasion of the Wolf Empire, but it's not. It's just the prelude to it. So there's really not a whole lot of point to even getting it. There's so little that happens in it that I would recommend saving your $35, to be perfectly honest. But I did say that there are some good things in here, and I want to go over that because it's not all doom and gloom. There are some things in here that give me a little bit of hope as to where this is going, and then I'll get into where I think it's actually going to go, based on what's in this book. Some potential predictions. So, we've got a little bit of hope for the HPG situation. Finally, at long last, Catalyst seems to have acknowledged that the HPG thing is dumb and that they're making very small, but still some steps toward getting it fixed. So one of the clans in the Clan Protectorate in the Free Worlds League, I believe it was Sea Fox, I can't keep them all straight. One of the clans made a deal with one of those duchies that was probing at the Wolf Empire that if they stopped their part of the invasion, they would build HPGs for them, because they've apparently figured out how. Whether or not they actually have that ability is kind of left in the a little bit vague, but it's implied that they've discovered how to rebuild HPGs. That means that it can be done, which I've always said, it can be done. It's not a permanent thing, the HPGs being down. Just because the Republic of the Sphere tried and failed miserably doesn't mean that other people, won't be able to do it. So there's some hope there. It's very small and probably won't go anywhere because now the entire Free Worlds League is invading, and so their agreement with that particular clan is likely not going to stand, but at the very least it's been confirmed that people can, that's a little generous. It hasn't been confirmed that people can fix the HPGs because we don't know if they actually had that ability or if they were bluffing, but it's heavily implied that there are people out there who have figured out how to do it. So that's a good step. We're getting somewhere. We're getting closer to ending the Blackout, because the Blackout has been a thorn in the side of this franchise for far too long. Should have been retconned, but they don't want to retcon anything, so they're trying to make things work. But we've made some progress there. That was my big positive takeaway from this book, is that there's potential for the HPGs to be fixed, finally. So, where do I think the story goes from here? Well, again, not a whole lot happened, so my overall impression of the Ill Clan era is largely unchanged. So, this was billed to me by people in my audience, and people who had read it, and people who were looking at the various promotional things. This was going to be the turning point. This was going to be where you would see that Alaric Ward was going to get his teeth kicked in, and that taking Terra was going to be the poison chalice, and remember what Devlin Stone said to him, and all this other stuff. That's not what this book is at all. Maybe there will be one in the future that does that, but I'll be honest, this really feels like a setup for something bigger, and the book feels like it's written from the clan's perspective. We spent a lot of time dealing with Othar, I think his name was, the Star Colonel in charge of the couple galaxies that are defending what's left of the Wolf Empire, and it's mostly about him, and it feels like it's being told from his perspective. And the every time things start to get a little bit touchy, it's like, and there was silence from Terra, and there was silence from Terra, and it builds up this impression that at some point the silence is going to end and the clan is going to come back and retaliate. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think because it's the events in this take place over the course of a year and a half. That's a lot of time after Terra has been successfully taken. What is Clan Wolf doing up there during this year and a half? They're not just sitting around doing nothing, at least I hope not. They're probably rebuilding. They're probably utilizing Terra's, frankly, impressive industrial base to build their forces back up. And I wouldn't be surprised if the amount of delay that the Free Worlds League has taken getting their asses in gear, and the lack of action from the other great houses, is all so that Clan Wolf can come swooping back in, kick everybody out, and maybe gain some more territory in the process and become the dominant superpower of the Inner Sphere. It still feels like that's what they're building towards. Now, it's possible that's not the case. It's possible. There's some language in here that might indicate that Alaric Ward is an absolute moron, because he is, who can't see past Terra itself and is just sitting around basking in his own glory, and he'll sit by doing nothing while everything else falls apart around him. And really, the whole thing doesn't do him a lot of favors. It feels like it's, in some places, it feels like it's almost trying to make him look like the villain. There's one planet in here where the population was entirely reliant on imports from other planets to stay alive, and so the Free Worlds League shows up and finds a planet full of starving people who are literally dying because Alaric Ward pulled all their resources in his bid for Terra and left these people essentially to die. So it could be that they're building him up to be a villain. What I'm hopeful that they're doing is that they're trying to 1-2 punch some of the biggest problems from modern Battletech. They've got rid of Devlin Stone in the Republic of the Sphere, which nobody liked, and what I'm hoping is going to happen now is that Alaric Ward is going to be drunk on his own arrogance. He's going to be stuck there on Terra, just being like, I'm big and important now, look at me, I'm the Ill Clan, and then everybody takes all of his stuff. But they've waited so long to get into that I kind of feel like that's not what's going to happen. And Clan Wolf's plot armor is still very strong here, because again, nobody's touching their stuff. Nobody. And there's lots of potential for the Free Worlds League's invasion to fail, because they have the Clan Protectorate, who, over the course of the events in here, have essentially sided with the Ill Clan. They've decided that his authority is what they're going to respect, and they have attacked some Free Worlds League forces here and there, and they were the only ones who voted against going to war with the Wolf Empire, and I feel like they're going to be tying the Free Worlds League shoelaces together and generally hampering their invasion at every turn, and possibly even declaring war themselves. We'll see how that goes. It's entirely possible that the Free Worlds League will have their hands tied and not be able to do a whole lot, even though they're invading completely undefended territory. It feels like everybody's hamstrung. It's just... It's plot armor is what it is. Because, again, this territory should have been gobbled up immediately after Alaric Ward left. You don't pull out all of your military assets from a point and don't have the enemy immediately move in and retake it. I don't think I need to remind you guys of what happened in Afghanistan recently. So, it doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense that this is the way things are going, and I still see it as being a case of them building up Clan Wolf to have some gigantic triumph, and honestly, there's not a whole lot in here that inspires confidence in me that it's gonna get better, to be honest. There was some good stuff, there were some neat battles here and there. Most of the interesting stuff that takes place happens in Canopus, which is a terrible state of affairs to be in. So, I mean, it's a bad day to be a Capellan fan, if those truly do exist, because their relationship with the Endurians and the Canopians is falling apart, and so their meteoric rise seems to be going downhill. But other than that, there's just nothing, man. Like, don't spend $35 on this. There's nothing in here. There's no reason to spend money on it. Go look up a summary on fucking Sarna if that's not already out, then when it comes out. And that's all you'll need to be caught up, because there's just nothing here. There's nothing in here that we didn't already assume was going to happen. And what is there is very inconsequential for the most part. And the consequential thing happens at the very end, so wait for the next one. If you want to watch Clan Wolf fighting the Free Worlds League in the Wolf Empire and desperately defending their territory, wait for the next one when they come back to this, because it's not in here. They marketed it like it would be in here, but it's not in here. So that's my 20-minute rant on everything here. This ain't it, Chief. It's possibly a step in the right direction. It's possibly a step in the wrong direction, and like before, there's just not enough information for us to be able to make a whole lot of conclusions about it. Everything is still very speculative. We don't have any information to base predictions off of. Hardly at all. We're 2 source books in now, and neither of them have really offered up anything substantial. Oh yeah, that reminds me. The Lyran Commonwealth pulls some wacky shit in this book in like one section. So, you may remember reading through Tamar Rising how the catchphrase of that book is, they didn't have the resources. They don't have the resources to go and take the undefended territory in the Falcon occupational zone. They don't have the resources to go into the completely undefended Wolf Empire. They don't have the resources to claim all the free shit that's out there. All the free resources that are out there. They don't have the resources to get the resources. They don't have the resources to deal with the Tamar Pact rising up and some of their soldiers going rogue. They don't have the resources to deal with the former Archon carving out a little slice for himself. They don't have the resources to stop the Commonwealth from balkanizing. But in Empire alone, they apparently have the resources to take a planet from the Free Worlds League, potentially provoking a counterattack from one of the only somewhat stable houses in the Inner Sphere. It doesn't make any sense. Either the 8th Lyran regulars are acting of their own accord, or Trillian Steiner has really overdosed on stupid juice, because that's a retarded move to make. There is no reason to attack the Free Worlds League at the moment. They're not in a position to fight them in any meaningful way, and the territory that's there is more heavily defended than what's in the occupational zones that they refuse to touch. So there's no reason why they should be going after anything in Free Worlds League space, but they did. They took a planet or 2 from them, and then just kind of disappeared after that. It's kind of up in the air. So we don't know if they're acting on their own volition, or if they're on Trillian Steiner's orders, or what. But apparently Steiner does have some resources that they didn't have in Tamar Rising. So that happened. Yeah, I almost forgot about that. I don't know what the fuck's going on with the Lyran Commonwealth anymore. And it just feels like everything is just kind of thrown together here. Like, I can't follow it half the time. It feels like it's contradicting itself as it goes along. But yeah, end of the day, there's no content to this book at all. Empire alone. And it's just a big book of nothing. And it's not a big book at all, it's tiny. But if you were really anticipating a lot of badass shit coming out here, sorry to disappoint you, but it's just such a tiny little pathetic attempt at having some content pushed out. And beyond that, it doesn't give me a lot of hope for Dominions Divided, because well, that's another one that's being hyped up right now. People say, well, wait till that comes out. Wait till that comes out. You'll see what happens with Rosselhog and see if things get better there. I don't have any confidence in it. I just don't. There's no reason to. This is the quality that we're at here. This is the caliber that we're dealing with. So we've got 2 duds in a row. Well, 3 if we count the original Ill Clan book. We got 3 duds in a row from the Ill Clan era. And while there's potential for things to get better, there's not a whole lot of indication that that's what's going to happen. It's possible. It's possible. But I don't have a lot of faith still. It hasn't convinced me. and I'm looking forward to the next book, and hopefully, if Dominions Divided turns out to be good, then I will happily announce to the entire world that I was wrong and glad to be so. But until that time, we just gotta have to wait and see, just like before. So, that's the long and very, very, very short of what goes on here. Save your money. And until next time, this is Mage Leader, signing off.